Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Off the Mark. I am your host, Miss Tootie O, and with me, as always, is my beautiful, amazing co-host, Miss Meeks Kali. Hello, my dear.
Hello, love. So excited.
Me
At
too.
it again.
Episode 31. We're ready to go. We
Yeah.
have our guns in our holster, so to speak. As
Oh,
this
oh, 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 wait, the other way.
we gunned all wrong, but it's okay.
Somebody say it over here.
I'm
Sorry.
from California, so yeah, gun free, way to the B. So if you haven't noticed yet, which you probably haven't because that was very confusing but funny.
We're on the same page now. We got it. We got it.
On gun control and or gun control and the recent mass shootings that have happened in the last the last few days, really, the last few weeks, and just the way they've just been rolling them out. And somebody just mentioned to me today, you notice how once everything started to open up, now all of a sudden we have these mass shootings. Well, it's not by coincidence. We were just discussing this. We've had over 20 mass shootings since the Gold Spa shooting. Right?
Yeah, in Atlanta.
Which in so facto sparked the Asian racial hate thing. All these things are just rolling out. One of the more recent ones had a combination of all kinds of stuff. We had a minority, a black fella in military uniform who was attacked by police officers. I mean, they're
Black Latino. They're checking all the boxes.
He was a Latino?
Yeah.
They really are checking out all the boxes. They really are. That is just crazy. And anyway, yeah. So that's what it's going to be about. We're gonna discuss them in detail as best as we can without being too insensitive, as we do know lives were lost. And it's not going to be an easy feat. Gun control isn't a thing. If you ask me, we have enough laws in place constitutionally that take care of everything, and anything else outside of the law is illegal already. So it just all of this seems to be a sneaking in its own tail thing. What you want, lady?
Yeah, we're getting to the point where any further gun control only prevents like deserving citizens from having reasonable access instead of preventing any like illegal activity or excessive use.
Right. It doesn't like we mentioned in the last cast. Criminals are going to criminal. They are going to get their hands on them regardless. Um, and another interesting thing, which was I think we also mentioned in the last cast, was we had a previous president who directly had his hands involved in trafficking weapons over to Mexico or back here. Either way, they were going back and forth illegally, like butter, with permission from the United States because it's a money grabbing, much like other things. A lot of big heads in the government do. A lot of things are trafficked, and they're either turning a blind eye and or directly involved in it. And that's not conspiracy. It's more and more becoming fact. The hard part is convincing. The hard part about this whole conspiracy tinfoil hat thing that people like to throw around is convincing people that these types of things, these types of shootings, have their own pattern to themselves. These aren't just coincidences, and these aren't just people going crazy and wanting to shoot things up. And we have to understand that the news does drive everything. It drives our emotions. It drives the thing we're going to eat. It drives the next thing we're going to think. The next thing we're going to say. The next thing we're going to have an opinion about. It's all it does, and we can't help it unless we turn it off.
It affects how we spend our money and how we vote and how we're continuing to feed the machine of it all.
Literally, and it's just the thing is it's not when you take a step back and again pull yourselves outside of the situation emotionally, you do start to see these patterns come about. Again, it's no surprise that a black Latino in a military uniform was harassed by cops on video, so violently. I think they pepper sprayed him, and apparently for no reason. I don't really know that story. And I didn't watch the video because the parts of the video I did watch, I've been pepper sprayed before. The man, I mean, he either had great restraint,
Mhm.
but which wouldn't make sense to have all of a sudden great restraint. If there's a reason for them to pepper spray you, you obviously got aggressive in one way, shape, or form. You obviously resisted something in one way, shape, or form. They didn't knock on your window and go, "Hey, fella,"
Mhm.
that didn't happen. An altercation happened beforehand.
I
Whether
hadn't seen the video in full. I've only seen it like kind of chopped up to the key points. So how much like minutes spread between like their first like threat to him and the actual pepper spraying and all that, I'm not quite certain of. But my understanding was that they found there was a vehicle identified that Crone Navarro was driving. He didn't have a license plate, although he had a paper license in the back window. But it was dark at nighttime, and I think he had dark windows on it, tinted windows on his car even. And so were trying to pull him over. He drove an additional 2 miles so that he could get to a gas station instead of just pulling over at the side of the highway because he wanted to find a well-lit area so that
right,
his cameras would pick it up and he'd be, have more evidence of the encounter.
right,
So they're playing into that too a lot, that he was trying to be mindful and careful in that way. But also for that 2 miles that the cops are following him, they don't exactly know that what he's doing or how far he's going to go and whatever. So that's already like increasing their tensions
of
to a
course,
degree and escalating it, even though he himself isn't necessarily escalating it. It's creating a dynamic already. So by the time that they did pull him over at the gas station, he refused to step out of his vehicle, and he said that he felt um, like threatened, and or that he felt like he was in danger, and um, or that he was scared. And they said, well, you should be scared. So they're already like creating that dynamic where he's feeling like there's an unfair power balance. And so these particular cops in this particular incidents, like the article that we'll share, so this particular person's actions seemed um, relatively in line. I don't know, aside from like the car, if he was driving odd, or if he's from the video clip, it didn't seem like he was under the influence. He was speaking coherently. The main thing was just that he didn't want to get out of his vehicle. He was holding his hands outside of the car as to like show that he was
right.
complying, and they didn't like that he wasn't actually getting out of the car, so they pepper sprayed him. It was my understanding of the encounter, even though he was in military uniform, and he was even using that as an excuse, and that kind of antagonized them. I think that he said, I've served my country, I'm in uniform, and this is how I get treated. So it almost played into like a dynamic. I wonder if because I'm sure that this isn't the first incident where a vet has encountered a cop and it's escalated.
Well, exactly. You can't use that one. I'm a celebrity. Come on, man. You know me.
Right.
I'm sorry. It doesn't work. Thank you for
That
saying
doesn't pertain to this isolated
right.
incident.
It doesn't. Things don't work that way. We don't. This idea of privilege and entitlement doesn't just exist for white people the way we've been told. And again, white privilege isn't a thing. Privilege is a thing, and to have privilege is a beautiful thing. Because either if you have a privilege or something, it probably means you earned it. You've made your way to have that type of privilege. Privilege is a good thing. So that
To
being
some
said,
degree, nepotism is a thing
but
too.
exactly, and I was just about to make that point. That being said, again, you can't walk around and try to look, man. I serve my country. I can get away with this and that and the other. And in my opinion, I don't think he was trying to get away with anything outside of maybe not getting a ticket. But if this was a real incident, if this incident did happen and play out as a real active scenario where real human beings were involved and not some bullshit false flag thing, and I'll explain why I feel that way in a second, is if it played out exactly the way it did, I don't see that this person did anything wrong.
Right.
Aside from egos clashing, the way human egos clash,
Hmm.
that cop's reaction, and that's the part I did see. His hands were out, and then they started pepper spraying the hell out of him.
Hmm.
What bothered me about that is that his hands didn't go to his eyes. He didn't cough. He wasn't coughing at all. He was yelling. He
Hmm.
was able to speak clearly. He was able.
Right.
They weren't spraying him with pepper spray. That
Right.
shit chokes the hell out of you.
Right.
I still have lung problems till this day from being pepper sprayed, and I was pepper sprayed over a year ago. It irritates your throat. It irritates your lungs, and depending on how bad you get it, I mean, sometimes it just seems like it just it triggers like dust, some things trigger, and that's immediately what I think of. It's like, oh, it's just like that day. And it's
Yeah,
just,
I don't think that they really showed him coughing, and
they
almost
did not.
instantly
I
after
watched
he was pepper sprayed, he says like in a clear tone voice, "This isn't right."
it. Right.
You know,
What did
not
I
like,
do? I
"Oh, you got, oh, this isn't right."
not
You
at
know,
all. That's what
yeah,
I'm saying. I know for a
yeah,
fact they didn't pepper spray him. That's what I'm saying. And his hands, your hands will
hmm
immediately go to your eyes. He
hmm
calmly went slowly to the ground. Okay, first of all, if you were going to calmly get on the ground, you should have calmly gotten out of the car
hmm
and avoided this entire situation in the first place. So none of this story makes any sense to me, not one bit. Well, I would have done the same exact thing he did, if I'm being honest. If I'm in the middle of a road, middle of the night,
hmm
cops want to pull me over.
hmm
I'm a female. I'm a
right,
minority. I can understand all those scenarios.
right,
I would love to drive a couple miles to any type of well-lit area. But then you call 911. Hey, look, I have officers following me. I don't feel safe. I want to get to a well-lit area before I pull over. But please, if you can contact them, let them know I will pull over. That's it.
mm,
Cover your ass.
right,
Not everybody thinks that way in those scenarios, but if that was his intention to
hmm
consciously pull over and into a well-lit area, you would think, especially being in the military and having plan Bs all the time and having a cover
right,
your ass
hmm
mentality, that would be something that he would do. Because immediately that's something that I thought, well, duh, call 911, let them know. Big deal.
hmm
There is one, no matter what, his license, his driver's license, whatever, if we want to get down balls deep into it, he's constitutionally able to drive without all of those things. We have
hmm
the constitutional right to travel,
right, hmm
non-commercially. We have the right to travel, freely. We'll get into that later because that's a good one to talk about. So if you
yep,
don't have a license, I'm gonna look you up. Um, so there's that. And the truth is, this isn't something that I believe they even teach in the military, which is something that our military should know.
yeah.
The Constitution back and forth, in and out. So that
Especially if
especially,
you're going to be representing us in foreign nations. Yeah,
thank you, and not just that, but protecting us
yeah,
with that Constitution.
right,
So, like I said, all of this about the Nazario or story, just nothing sits well with me one bit.
Mhm.
Um, I
It's
don't.
very curious that's happening during the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin trials, and that it is between police force and military, because there has been so many like instances and call and almost preparation for, camps and martial law and all of those kinds of things, that it's leaning towards siding with the military as being the heroes now instead of the police force. The police force are the villains, when it used to be like, especially in the 70s or whatever, like war is bad and the military are the evil folks or whatever, and then the police are the hero on the ground that's like protecting the home front nation. So it's an interesting like dynamic where we're being told that the police force is bad, even though they've been getting supplied with all this military like surplus that's empowering them beyond the needs and means of, the communities that they're serving. And yet they're, of course we should, support our troops in the sense of their defense of the nation, but also they're sent out as mercenaries in all sorts of agendas, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And that, just like it's every cop's duty to uphold, the law and constitution, regardless of what their higher ups are commanding them to do. Um, and yeah, they're like, you can tell that the George Floyd trial isn't going necessarily according to plan, or maybe it is, but in whatever sense, it's not the result that people are prepared for. And so they're directing our attention elsewhere to reaffirm this issue and problem that we have of, um, yeah, needing to defund the police or reform the police force, and Black Lives Matter, and there being a hate disease, they're calling it a hate disease
right.
in America.
An American disease. Yeah, that, I mean, it's the way they word it. Like we're all as a whole a sick people. And the last cast you said, um, the best way to go about convincing ourselves otherwise is to go out and reach out to other communities and to understand that these incidences, whether we take them for face value or not, are anecdotal at best. They're isolated incidents. They're not.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna go outside and expect a cop to bother me unless I'm actually doing something that I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And
I mean, hopefully.
I
There's
mean,
certainly incidents where, just like there's
well, my
bad
thing is,
bunch in
I don't.
every group.
Well, I don't expect that to happen.
Right, right,
I don't expect to go out and get hit by a car. I don't expect to go out and
right.
get raped. I don't expect to go out and get murdered. We don't expect any of these things to happen to us. That's why I said they're isolated, they're anecdotal.
Mhm,
If this was
mhm,
something that we expected the second we walked out our door, yes, we maybe have a little bit of a systematic racial issue, or a systematic
mhm.
rape culture, or a systematic this and that. Whatever issues that we're all bitching and crying about right now, if these were systematic cultural problems, we'd all be shitting our pants. And the
Right.
truth is, we're not. We literally sit and wait our turn to do so. That's how spoiled and privileged we really are, if you want to talk privilege, is we all sit and wait our turn to be a victim of nothing. An American disease. Karen Nazario case shows hate as an American disease, not just a white one. So there's already two divisions there. Well, three. A minority, the entire country, and white people, of course.
Mhm.
Three divisions in one sentence. And right under it, the word diversity.
Yeah. That diversity isn't a solution to hate, isn't limited to police abuse cases. It extends to all hate crimes as tracked by the FBI. So they're saying that it's not just that police are having police brutality against minorities, but in general, Americans at large are hateful and harming each other, paying no mind to the conditions, you know, that are commonplace between us that are creating these dynamics within.
Right, right.
Like they create food deserts where they don't have, fresh produce available to an entire like sector of city, and then wonder why like people aren't well nourished and, operating at their utmost. So like we're plugging holes instead of addressing the leak kind of thing.
I wouldn't, but those kinds of things, they're not systematic racist issues. They're systematic failures of democratic infrastructure, especially here in California. My neighborhood, I can buy Takis and hot Cheetos, like they come to me in a big ass ice cream truck. But fresh produce is not.
Yeah.
I don't have a Whole Foods in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? We do have markets, obviously. It's not like it's like a refugee thing, but you
Mm.
know, fresh organic foods and things of that nature, they don't exist in our neighborhoods the way they would exist freely in other neighborhoods just down the road in Naples and where it's just like and if they do, they're at our smaller local markets like Northgate, and
Mhm.
they're $10. They're like $3 more than other processed fruits and things and canned goods and stuff. So it's like you know it, it's I think it's done that way on purpose so that the areas that are overall have a minority population stay stuck
Mhm.
because it's these areas that have the biggest food stamp rates and welfare we're the ones that use those resources the most, and it's not just you know there's a lot of areas in the Bible Belt and rural areas that have the same thing. We just
Right.
don't know that it's out there, and
Right.
that's my point. Is we don't get out, we don't walk outside our doors and understand that it's not just me who's poor, it's you too.
Right.
But that's not racial oppression. That's a systematic thing that our government has failed us. And the whole idea is that we get off our own asses and figure it out for ourselves before
Mhm.
it's too late. Your own gardens, plant your own foods, take care of your own health, figure out how to make homesteads just in case, these buildings, these things fail us, or
Mhm.
they kick us out because you don't have your COVID vaccine. We can't have you in this apartment building.
Right.
There are so many reasons why it's important for us to look beyond our own backyard and our own realm,
Mhm.
because one, we get the answers that we're looking for in ourselves while looking at others and understand that we have those things in common, and two, when we're able to do that, we actually have a voice. We actually are able to say, hey, I have a garden. Hey, I know how to do tomatoes. Hey, I know, you know what I mean? It sounds so cheeseball, but you know what, we're on our way there, unless you get the vax, unless you buy crypto, unless there's so many unlesses on down the road.
Right.
unless you let the immigrants in, and now you have to pay 55% more in taxes because these people are here. So there's so much about this gun control thing, and Biden's push for these executive orders. It's not just about gun control. All these things are related and connected completely.
You can see how it fills the picture that everything, like you're saying, that adds up to self-reliance of being able to control your food, your health, your wealth, your property, that's exactly what they've been attacking and having an assault on, all the things that fortify life, having a close-knit family. They're attacking that. There are, property taxes. They have all these rules about where and when and how you can garden or farm, or what you can do with the soil. They have, your driver's license and all those kinds of things to restrict our travel. They're trying to attack the guns just so that you can't, protect and defend the homestead that you build. So we'll go through a list that incidentally, just as all these events are happening, Biden is proposing executive actions to curb gun violence. Okay, so Biden's proposed executive actions to curb gun violence in the U.S. So the DOJ to propose rule to stop ghost guns, which of course are ones where you purchase gun kits that you can assemble at home, but then they don't have the same serial numbers on them. To propose rule on stabilizing braces, to publish red flag legislation for states, admin to invest in community violence interventions, DOJ to issue annual report on firearms trafficking, and Biden to nominate gun control advocate to lead ATF. So just as has been per usual this entire time of his, time in office so far, that he's just been rambling through executive orders to correct course. Now we're having all these executive actions around gun control, and it's painting quite the picture, the allegiances that he's having, the border crisis that we have, the COVID pass. I mean, a year ago, you were thought to be crazy if you were a conspiracy theorist if you talked about a COVID pass. How ridiculous. No one would ever. And now it's like, well, you're selfish if you don't want a COVID pass. Just get back to normal life. All those silly people, you don't want a COVID pass? What, are you just going to wear a mask for the rest of your life? That's kind of mind situation that they're
These
doing.
idiots that got the vax are still wearing the mask.
I know.
What the heck? What difference did it make to you to inject some aluminum in your arm? Except that, you didn't, unless you become, when they start to make vaccines, when you can become Spider-Man, I'm in.
Then,
otherwise, that radiation they can keep. The executive orders that he pushed out within the last 2 weeks, Joe Biden, I mean, the red flag one is an interesting one. That one is more, it's so, in my opinion, it's a very juvenile order. It's very, not very well thought out. It's basically a family member and or doctor or somebody relative or somebody of authority can basically say, hey, that bitch is crazy. Don't give her no guns. And that's it. That's basically all they have to do. And that's not okay to do. I mean, that you could basically do that to anybody.
You could ruin anybody's right to protect themselves.
Exactly. That obviously without even having to explain it, there's reasons why people can logically think that would be a good idea. Well, it would stop the gun violence. It would stop the mass shootings. It's not. Well, no, it won't. First of all, and two, like I said, people are cray, and criminals are going to criminal no matter what. It's not going to curb anything. All the laws and rules and background checks and everything that we have in place now are exactly perfect and tailor-made, even for the most modern of times. Anything outside of what we have in the realm of constitutional, the right to bear arms and this and that, are they stand the test of time. You mentioned the ghost guns and how they have they're not easy to trace and they're not easy. Well, you know what I learned recently is that you can make your own gun and that's not illegal to do. You can
Right.
like make your own weapon, and that's not illegal to do. And you know that I found that pretty fucking fascinating. Like, oh, that's cool. I don't know. I don't think I would ever do it, but because I would just hurt myself. But I thought that was pretty cool. So for that to be something that's legal, constitutionally sound, I understand. I can understand why that would be a thing that we can actually do. It doesn't. It doesn't. The serial numbers on these guns doesn't really change anything, because I think I'm as far as I know, it's not like a car would be, where you know you would transfer, you would buy a gun, and or you would buy a car and hey, this car belongs to John Smith, and then oh, John Smith wants to sell this car, so let me get that bill of sale and give it to you, and now you have to put your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
So guns don't work that way.
So if somebody buys a gun and then sells it at a gun show or something, like they don't know who it was necessarily sold to, or they have to like paper trail it back to whoever from the original person through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's illegal to do. I want to say it is to sell a gun, but again, it just kind of makes the serial numbers obsolete. In their own way. The only reason why you would even scrub off a serial number is if the original owner did that he owned the gun and sold it that way. So either way, illegal. The laws are already in place. There's nothing more that we can change that's going to change people's reactions to what's going on in the world. Now, that being said, with these mass shootings, and let me just put it out there for anybody who's lost their lives and anybody who has family members who lost their lives or lost people to gun violence, my condolences, and I deeply apologize, and I hope the Lord brings you the comfort that you deserve and that you need. That being said, a lot of these shootings are more conveniently controlled than we think and we realize, which is why they have a pattern that they do. Again, I mentioned, somebody said, isn't it interesting how now all of a sudden we get to go outside and now the world is dangerous again?
Yeah.
Outside of COVID, like pick and choose which one was it?
There's always something to tell us to stay indoors at home.
Right. And mass shootings didn't stop because COVID started. That's what a ridiculous notion. Mass shootings or shootings in general didn't stop. In fact, gun violence probably went up. You know, and the truth is, if it didn't go up, I wouldn't be surprised either. Because you want to know something? A lot of people bought guns within the last year, legally bought guns within the last year since COVID started.
That's true. Yeah.
Tons of people. So you would think that the gun violence would actually be a little bit lower. I don't know. It just, none of it seems to be computing to me right now. Not a damn bit. Obama years, mass shooting. Trump years, crickets. One here, one there. Biden years, mass shooting. And he hasn't even been there like 2 months, 3 months. He has 3 more years. we got to start seeing it somewhere, you guys.
We got to do the like reverse engineering where like if we're taking it play by play along with them, they're going to take us on a wild goose chase and like we're going for a ride, you know? But like if we can see it like reverse engineering, like starting with the end in mind, and we can see like, imagine they're bad people who wanted total control. How would they go about that? They'd probably want to like take away your defenses, take away your like self-reliance and sustenance. They'd probably, you know, want to do all these things. And then you see how the steps that we're taking are leading in those directions. And you can kind of like, you know, point A to point B it about why all this is coming about and why we're being bombarded with, you know, just mass shooting after mass shooting, and that they're bombardment. Right? I couldn't hold it in.
Bombardment.
Bombardment. No. I caught it. I'm safe. Son, are you okay? I guess. Bombardment.
Just mass shooting after mass shooting. And we've seen, you know, examples from previous ones, how there was a lot of questionable, you know, events surrounding like the Colorado movie theater one, or I forget now the other school shooting a few years back, like 8 years back or something, even now, that was the really big one. But even those kids, Sandy Hook, that a lot of those kids that were victims of that event had their picture in other news articles from other, like, you know, events or that they had died already, or there's all types of stories like that. So we can't take every shooting at face value. We have to really see like, what does that mean for me as far as me protecting my family and, you know, taking care of my responsibilities and duties, and what does that mean for me in supporting and stewarding the like future of humanity at large? What does that mean is my role in the greater community, and not just like flying into like, oh, this happened to somebody else, so that means somebody else should make this happen. You know, like we're like relinquishing our power so much, and especially when it's still impacting us. If this is going to like prevent our own access to guns, should we come to a point where we do need to defend ourselves against our own government, we won't be equipped or allowed to do so. And it's interesting, even the like things that they're targeting, like the stabilizing base, like that just makes your aim more accurate. So you're not preventing criminals from like, are you wanting them to miss their target and hurt more people, or like what's really the agenda from that? Or are they wanting to weaken somebody's defenses from, should they have like what was that place in Waco, Texas, you know, that whole thing, like maybe they're wanting to prevent having a formidable foe in that sense of there actually being these pockets throughout America that could defend itself against, you know, insurrection from inside or whatever, you know, tyranny. And then the other thing, like you were saying, the red flags, like that reminds me of Minority Report, is it? Where,
Yes.
you know, like these thought crimes are basically like you're guilty before you've even like had a chance to act on it. And so even with just all the evidence of how they've targeted our social medias over these last few months and all this cancel culture, like how simple would it be to be like, oh, this one person posted this one meme where they were like not in support of gun control, so I should report them to make sure that they don't start buying guns or whatever. Like people could take that to such an extreme, and for us to have that like authority or persuasion over other people's like ability to protect themselves is wild. So it's interesting how we're like having such an odd accountability for each other, but it's not like I am my brother's keeper, but it's more like just big brother.
Exactly. That's all it is. And you see that, you see it everywhere now. That's why these videos of people fighting over their mask are going viral.
Yeah.
They want you to tell on everybody. They want you to be a snitch. There was something that came out today. Let me see if I can find it real quick on about a bill to expose the name and address of everyone who signs a recall petition just passed the Senate Elections Committee. California's counter marches on. So that happened here in California. So I mean, snitches, bro. Snitches are not getting stitches right now. Getting rewards.
Yeah, stimuluses.
Right? Where's my $1,400? You know what you mentioned earlier, which I thought was amazing. You mentioned basically the responsibility of the family unit.
Yeah.
And the one major thing that a lot of these and most of these shootings actually do have is that they come from single parent homes. They don't come of a very structured family life.
Right.
That's again, I mean, I can't say it anymore. And it is to suggest that having that structure does give you a better chance of becoming a functioning, well-adjusted adult in society. You know, being a single parent only decreases those chances. And I'm a single parent because single parents have to find a balance between being able to raise their children. Now, every parent should be raising their children with values, regardless if you're single or with somebody else. But it's being able to being able to work, take the time to take your children and do things with them so that they learn and they grow and this and that. It's just a lot easier and a lot more balanced when you have a two-parent home.
Mm-hmm.
And those are statistics that you can't argue. That one of the bigger movements lately that has tried to argue and break that family union is the Black Lives Matter movement. Completely
Yeah.
wanting to destroy, saying that it's racist to outright demand or say that children need their fathers. That's not racist. Children do need their fathers.
Right.
What you're doing is telling fathers, you can go ahead and bail because I don't need you right now.
Right.
No, it's just, these are the things and the wills and the brainwashing that they're doing to people. And that is the trickle down effect of what brings us to any type of crime, basically, not just gun violence crime, any type of crime. You know what I mean? If one, we're in bad shape being told that we're oppressed. that the government isn't here to help us, and yet the only people that help people with that type of oppressed attitude is the government, and they don't feel helped because they're stuck. The government won already. You're stuck. You have no choice but to do what they want you to do, and that is the oppression.
Right.
Not the bullshit they're telling you outside about police and white people and this and that and Trump supporters.
Right.
The oppression is already on you, and it's them doing it to you. The same people telling you that we're doing it to you are doing it to you. Wake up. Like, I mean, and it blows my mind because they're doing it to me too. They're doing it to all of us. And like I said, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Is that what it is? Squeaky wheel gets the juice, gets the oil.
Gets the grease, yeah.
Squeaky mouse gets the cheese. That was a good one. Yeah. It's so, I mean, you know, yes, there's correlations between the family unit and violence, and gun violence specifically, and mental health issues, and there's so many things, like coping with ourselves emotionally is something that's not easy for us to do. You know what I mean? It's just being able to process emotions and being able to process anger and sadness and grief and loss. Obviously, we're out of control. We're burning buildings down. We don't know how to process anything right now.
Right.
We're not
We're being taught more and more that, we all just have to fall in line with the PC narrative instead of actually having discussions about our varying opinions. And so we don't know how to deal with each other. A lot of people didn't know how to be locked in the home with their family and their spouses. And there's been a lot of mental health, issues as a result within families and from people who are isolated, literally isolated by themselves for over a year now, having their groceries delivered and whatever. So just as we're having all this concern about gun violence, we're completely avoiding or glossing over all the deaths from people that have due to a result of like overdose or whatever, from suicide or whatever it is, from their mental health, or just them not being able to live life fully. Like that in itself is a death and a loss.
Right.
In the meantime, just because they're suffering from depression at the time, even if it's not as severe that they're actually entirely gone and they can't get it back. So we're not addressing any of those issues, and they have been drawing attention to mothers are suffering from all the weight of that's being demanded of us during these pandemic times. And instead, the solution has been to like give mothers more support, like to make sure that they have free access to childcare and get the kids back in the schools and all those kinds of things. And it's like, yeah, that's a solution, but you're saying to separate the families is what's going to fix things and get that mom back in the office, like working and churning out, instead of like bringing more in, a village aspect where the mothers are able to come together and support each other and stuff, and be with their children more. They're like, their solution is the nanny state basically, and more government intervention and yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And it's funny because I like that you brought that up, because it took me back to, do you remember when we would fantasize about wanting to live in Sweden because they do their laundry for you and they take care of your kid for you basically? And like for the first 2 years or something, like that's just the program they have. It's like, dang, that sounds amazing. I wonder what other stipulations come with that. I wonder if there's forced vaccinations involved. If the mom has a required amount of hours that she has to work during the week, a certain amount of money that she has to make, or that the dad has to make. I just wonder what the requirements are for that, because on paper, all of that stuff does sound good. I'm just gonna do this, and the government's got my back. All of it on paper, until you realize that it's not. Until you realize that you're stuck, and then so now we're stuck. Well, now it's white people's fault that I'm stuck. Now it's gentrification's fault that I'm stuck. But it never goes back to the government. Why? Because the government keeps handing you food stamps. The government keeps handing you weekly money. The government keeps handing you stimulus. And it's only to shut you up. Because you know what? Because now you can pay for your Netflix. Now you can pay for, you can pay for our Patreon if you want. I'm just saying.
Just put that up. Good investment.
Put it out there. You guys can toss it right back.
If you like it, then keep it. If not.
It's just... yeah, I think we done good. We done good, kid, because I really was not trying to come off as an asshole with this one, but but there's the rush for these gun control things are not by accident, and they're also not for our safety. They're not for the idea that assault weapons are a thing. Assault weapon, assault weapon, assault weapon. See what I'm saying? We can't. Where's the line drawn?
Right.
Criminals are gonna criminal. You know,
It's just like after 9/11 with the airports of like, gotta take your shoes off and you can't bring a water bottle or your little shampoo container because it could be a weapon, like we know that the Great Reset is, where this train is headed. So they're saying that you'll own nothing and be happy about it if they can like make sure that they choose and provide our shampoo to us to make sure it's not potentially a weapon, or that it could get to that point unless we stop it in its tracks and nip it in the bud. But they're I'm combining all sorts of metaphors.
It reminds me
sound like Grandpa Simpson.
Homer, I'm sorry. Why we this is a whole Simpsons episode. We're just gonna throw Homer. But do you remember that when Homer was valeting the car? He valets the car and he looks back at the valet guy and he goes, "I know how many pennies are in there."
I counted the pennies in the ashtray.
I seriously feel like that's the government now. Like I feel like that's them. Like, you know what you're doing.
I know
Like
what you're doing.
it's just I don't know why. I don't know why.
I'll know.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I do. I think that was good. I think that was pretty informative. Thank you guys for watching. I honestly.
Oh, we didn't touch real quick on the Dante Wright too in Minneapolis. That's the other one that just happened where
I almost got away with it.
Almost. We were this close. Through the door.
You have to.
But we gotta acknowledge it. So there was that as well. So there's protests and riots again in Minneapolis amidst, we're on the third week now of the Chauvin trials, George Floyd trials, and Dante Wright was an unarmed melanated person that was shot because supposedly the officer, I think he was going back to his car and they meant to pull a taser and instead they pulled a gun.
That one's a tough one. I did get to listen to some police scanner footage of it. And on the police scanner, it does say that he is fleeing because he was running. And he did have a gun. The first time they said he has a gun in his hand. And the second time they said he had a gun in his waistband. Again.
The reports I heard said he was unarmed. Wow.
Oh, well, they're always unarmed, no matter what. So of course, again.
But if he has a gun, then it's not.
Right, exactly. But exactly, if he has
except for that thing.
That being said,
I'll get there.
a lot of people can argue. Well, cops always say that, and I have personally, and we have seen videos where no matter what, automatically they're like, stop resisting, and like, I'm not doing anything, I'm not resisting. I've only seen that. Those are real. So there's nothing to suggest that the cops are already doing the thing that they do, and already playing the script in their head. He has a gun, he has this, he has that. On the other side of that, to err on the side of caution, if he's fleeing, they have to assume he's armed because he's not fleeing for no reason. Right? So it's tragic either way. I think he was a 17, 18-year-old kid. Both parents came out flat out, do not use my son's death for your bullshit. Which I thought was amazing and beautiful. It didn't stop anybody. Minneapolis is under fire right now, and Foot Locker and GameStop again is getting destroyed, and a lot of people are getting some free shoes and video games for justice. So good for them. But if we're gonna relate this here, because this one's I think this one's more George Floyd, but it does tie into the whole American racism is a disease. Did she shoot him because he was Black? No, she shot him because he was fleeing. Did she mean to shoot him? No idea. She has resigned immediately. She's not working there anymore. She apologized. She did say she meant to pull out her taser and pulled out her gun instead. That remains to be seen. Maybe she's brand new. Either way, if we're gonna play advocate here, police reform, I'm for. Better police training, I'm totally for it. Because 6 months of training is nothing. If I had to go to college for 4 years for a stupid English degree,
right.
why do they only get 6 months to protect and serve us? Get the fuck out of here with that. That's not on us though, and that's not on them.
And even with all that training, again, playing devil's advocate, that doctors, like, medical error is going to happen. It's just like a statistics matter of numbers, that sometimes you're not going to be on your A game occasionally. And especially if the circumstances are such that it's in the middle of the night, or you haven't had enough sleep, or, you're oxygen deprived because of that, or whatever it is, the conditions of it, or you had a challenging, like, just the circumstances are challenging of it. So, like, there's human error to a degree that we have to allow as part of all of this, that it doesn't mean that systematic and intentional, that sometimes humans are going to make mistakes. I mean, a life was lost. That's a huge mistake, and I'm glad that she resigned accordingly and isn't putting herself in a situation to have that happen again, potentially. But is it never going to happen? Probably not. Is it specifically because of his race? Probably not. Would she have even gone to those measures if, say, he was a different person? Like, if it was, like, a child, you're not automatically going to go to taser them. So there was something even in her brain that deemed that situation taserable. So I've seen some critics say, like, even that police are trained or encouraged to reach for a weapon so quickly is a concern. So that's why they're having all these, like, suggestions for these in-between police that are going to, like, try to like de-escalate the situation and all that kind of stuff, and then they'll call the real police once they can't handle that, which is so absurd to, like, just throw another variable into a dangerous situation and then just delay the resolution of it, especially if it's already going to be that escalated. So there's a lot of, like, areas to reconfigure and reform how, and exactly, increasing police training so that it is more automatic, that there's less likelihood for area where you're not having to think about it. Because in these incidences, they're having to calculate, like, okay, they did this means this and this option, and they have to be, have their plan Bs and be 10 steps ahead and everything. And they have to go through their protocols. So if they're running, they have to go to the suspect or whatever is running away protocol. Would they apply that same protocol to, if somebody that seemed less threatening was running away? Who knows? Like, if it was an elderly woman running away in the same circumstance, would they have tried to taser her in that moment? Maybe not necessarily. So there is perhaps a little bit of that, of just, like, who we deem to be threatening or not, and whatever that personal experience is that makes someone deem this is a threat and this isn't.
Right. Here's my thing about that. If he's this is what always gets it gets a little bit tricky. If he or somebody is running away, yes, they're probably running away because they're trying to get away, because they're trying to hide something. But I mean, I think their training has to be more military. I think the cops have to be more physically fit and have to have a certain requirement and criteria, the way a football player does, the way, like I said, people in the military do, so that they don't have to resort to a weapon every single time.
Right.
We have hands, we have legs, we have bodies, we have our strength, we have our own resources.
Right.
We have, if multiple officers are if multiple officers are chasing somebody, and according to the police scanner recording, there was at least 2 or 3 chasing this person.
They should have been able to subdue.
Somebody should have been able to catch up and subdue.
Like, and, like, corner them and all that kind of stuff. And also, just to, like, contrast my last comment, obviously, like, if a elderly woman was running away, maybe they wouldn't taser her with the same way, not only because that's their impression of the danger of the situation, but also because, like, what's that elderly woman going to do to them versus a young person who's potentially armed and running away faster, like, poses a bigger threat. And at the end of the day, all of these police people are humans that want to get back home to their families as well at the end of the day. So their number one concern is their own protection and safety as well. And that's interesting in these type of public service offices, that ultimately self-preservation is the number one impulse And even with these government officials who were allowing to seek their own best benefit and payoffs and all those kind of things at the expense of the American people, like we're needing to recognize like they say, like power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like we have to recognize these kind of shortcomings of human nature and, you know, support each other around it so that we're not as vulnerable to them, like having more training so it can be more reflexive, so, you know, we have more context so that, you know, the police aren't having to encounter people in such circumstance of disparity that they would be in desperate situations where they would feel like they're, you know, at the end of their rope during the encounter with these police, that they have to get away, that they have to, you know, that it is so life and death for them either way.
Right. And I don't think we're over here trying to suggest that any police force is perfect by any means. In fact, most of them are corrupt.
Right.
Most of them have skeletons in their closet. There's
Absolutely.
no doubting that. A lot of them probably do have a lot of racial biases too.
Right.
I don't think there's any doubting that either. Yeah, again, I think that a lot of that does fall back to a humanistic standpoint, where if you have the same pattern and you have to encounter the same people every day, you're going to have a certain idea of those people.
Right.
And that's not okay, but it is human nature. It's human nature. You know, that being said, again, back to police reform, you know, taking care of them, giving them therapy as part of their health plan. I mean, there's so much that we can offer our police force and our military that we're not doing, which has now made both enemy number one to us in one way, shape, or form, the police especially, as our enemy number one. And the truth is, they've twisted it. The mainstream media has twisted it so much so that our only defense between the government and us is the police and the military. And they've decided to tell us one is evil. I'm waiting for the next one. I'm waiting for the next mass shooting where it's going to be somebody that's a vet and a Trump supporter. I'm waiting for something like that. I'm waiting for them to
is the shooter, you mean?
Yeah,
or the victim? Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be one that's going to be next. A crazy vet like the Vegas guy.
Yeah. Or Nashville bombing
because they certainly done such a good job pinning our police against us. And the truth is, I hope when push comes to shove, as corrupt and as afraid of I am even personally of police officers, I don't want to encounter a damn cop no matter what.
Right.
White people don't want to encounter cops no matter what. Nobody wants to encounter police because it usually always ends in a ticket or some kind of fine or blah blah blah. Either way, nobody wants to encounter them. We understand that. Everybody gets that.
When you're driving down the road, if a cop like is in the vicinity, everybody slows down.
Exactly. I get it.
Like the most innocent like everybody, you know.
I just hope at the end of the day, when it's time for when the shit hits the fan and push comes to shove, I hope at the end of the day, somebody in the police force understands that protect and serve means us and not them. That's all. That's the only reason why I want to be a supporter of the police, is because they're going to be the ones to save us when push comes to shove. I hope. I hope. So, you know, it's not about no. I don't want to play any disrespect to the military and or police force and or anybody who's passionate about Black lives, because Black lives are important. All lives are important. The Black Lives Matter movement is just total shit. It's crap, and it's destroying this country today. Minneapolis is on fire. Portland is on fire. California is going to be on its way this summer, which, you know, I'm still going to the beach.
Right.
I don't care, man. But I mean, it's on its way. And when it comes to Dante White,
right? I think
Dante White.
Right. Yeah.
I apologize for not getting his name right. Again, human nature does work in many ways, in both ways. Maybe he was scared. He was a little bit on the younger side. I think.
Yeah, he's young. So what's your instinct going to be like, especially like given the climate and his impression of the George Floyd trials and everything like that, you know? So not to say that he's guilty of anything either. Yeah.
He must have been terrified, if nothing else. If he had a weapon, I bet if he had one, he was going to get ready to use it to protect himself.
Right.
Not because he was evil. Not because he's a gangster and he's a bad kid. Even if he was a gangster, he's still a child.
Right.
And he was probably more terrified than those damn cops were.
Right.
And that's sad because this kid was raised to be afraid of those people. And I'm oppressed and I'm black and everybody hates me and this and that. I can't imagine that kid's last thoughts. That's the heartbreak, is that we have to change the narrative in order. So if we want to be responsible and hold ourselves responsible and accountable for all these anecdotal deaths that are happening around here, that's the way to do it. That's the way to hold our responsibility, is to do our part to change the narrative and to tell our young black men that no, man, nobody, you're not oppressed. Nobody hates you. You can do what everybody else does in this world. And pull each other up instead of putting each other down.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so distracted by Cardi B and everybody's boobs and everybody's ass and this and that, which is fine. The kids are gonna do what the kids do. That's exactly how we were when we were kids. The difference is it's in our faces 24/7 now. It's different. That's the only difference, is that there's no escaping it. Bombardment. It really is bombardment. And we just have to stay on top of it. So we don't mention these gun control things and these shootings and these things as, oh, that's fake and this and that. And we don't want to roll our eyes at every single thing that happens on this earth. We just want to be able to point out that there is patterns beyond what we can see when we have tunnel vision. It's just,
we're not saying that people aren't dying unjustly. Like, most certainly they are.
Right.
But what is the best course of action to bring any resolution to that? Like, if our attention is getting directed somewhere, like our attention is one of our most valuable assets. So it's up to us to captain our ship and course where we lay our attention on, and not just let it be bullied or pulled by the media, or, now we're going to care about this person, but never mind all these people. And we're going to care about this person, but never mind that. Like, what is going to bring about the most for all of us?
right.
And a lot of people are in desperate situations right now. So we just need to keep finding more ways to come together instead of tearing each other apart. And
Right.
the COVID pass is, like you said, it's drawing another line.
It is. It is. And they keep moving that flagpole like further and further away, where it's gonna become unreachable, or hopefully we learn just to ignore it completely. The American disease isn't racism. The American disease is misinformation and lies. We're being lied to 100%. They don't even through their own teeth. Joe Biden himself lies to us about the illegalities of gun control and how it's it's not working the way it's supposed to be. Like, no, bro, it is working exactly the way it's supposed to be. But crime. Like, hire Batman. I mean, that's the only solution we have. Hire Batman, because that guy knows how to stop crime. So I hear.
Legend has it.
Honestly, like, crime will always be around. See, there's just there's a yin and a yang to everything, and it makes for a fine nation when you can have a balance of yin and yang. That includes crime, that includes poverty, but that also includes wealth, and that also includes education, that also includes families, that also includes there's a balance. We're never going to have a utopian society, but we can have something close to it when we all decide to step out that door and understand that we do have a common place. And let's start with that common place and find out where we can build on top of that.
We're holistic beings and holistic communities. Like, there's more than just one. We can't just push a button or, pass an executive order and have the problem be fixed. We have to nurture and cultivate the whole garden of our lives and our communities at the same time.
Right. I think the best way to go about that is, again, I am so involved in encouraging you guys to just shut off that TV, shut off TMZ, get off of Facebook, get out of those tunnel vision and echo chambers, and it's really, really hard to do. Me and Miss Kelly, we have to find that balance. Also, there's times where I have to tell her I'm done for the day. I'm shutting this off. I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch a movie. I can't do this right now. And she's come at me in the same way. One, because we don't want to get lost in tunnel vision and have this idea that we can't, so much so we can't open ourselves to other opinions and other people's concerns. But two, because it's so very overwhelming. And I honestly, if you guys still watch TV, I honestly don't know how you do it. I don't know how you guys do it. That's
Now we watch it, but as long as we have the discernment of like seeing where it's coming from and just to, you know, keep our ear to the rails of what's going on out there. But I mean, they keep trying to paint this picture on the TV as if there's all these incidents of criminal and, you know, American disease, like it's like we're infected like zombies with this hate throughout the nation, rather than thinking of criminality as, yes, of course, there's like little isolated incidents of criminals, but at its, you know, core, it's an organized institution. You know, there's not just all these one-off criminals. Like there's organizations that are working with nations in such ways and foreign policies and all those. They've figured out trade routes and all those kinds of things and are working with governments and all of that. So rather than thinking that we need the government to make rules to keep the people safe from the criminals, because the people are criminals, if we realize that the government is the criminal source, because like we're always in a trade-off between economies of guns to butter or butter to guns economy. Either like we're not at war and we're just able to fortify our nation with our internal industry and, you know, build our products and surplus then, or we're outsourcing basically and trading for tanks and guns and protection and aircraft and all these really high-end expensive things that we don't have need or reason to purchase unless we're at war. So it more so behooves nations economically for us to be at war than in a time of peace. And when they can't outright make it war with people dying, because then we'd catch on, then they have to just have it be like moderate unrest and occupations and, you know, just to be the cover-ups of the drug trading or the arms trading or all these kinds of, or human trafficking or whatever it is. So if we think more in terms of that like, I don't need, you know, corrupt politicians telling us and my fellow man how to not be criminals, but we need to hold them accountable more to their corruption. And then we won't have the guns and drugs flooding in. And then we won't have people like fleeing because they're either, you know, not coherent because they're drugged out, or that they have arms at a time when they shouldn't, or that, you know, they're not protected by because it wasn't like they weren't trained with it properly and didn't have to go through the proper protocols to, you know, attain it. Like we're creating the problem by allowing the problem to fix itself.
Right. Four or five mass shootings and or police involved incidents in the last week or so, and nobody's talking about the illegal immigration crisis anymore.
Right.
That's basically
last week.
That's basically the point. Is exactly what she said. They these incidences are thrown at us so that when we actually have a concern towards other things that are happening around us, it's easy to just forget about it. It's easy to, you know, let's bury that one because this one's happening now. And that's what's happening now. That's exactly what's happening now. If the world isn't getting worse. The country isn't getting worse.
Right.
If anything, it should be getting better. We have to wonder why we're regressing if we really are regressing. That's a problem. And that's a problem that's an external problem, not an internal problem. And that's something that we have to see where it's coming from so that we can actually get rid of it internally. Mm-hmm. You know, get rid of that poison, you know, suck it out. It's not easy. It's all we know. It's all we know to turn on the news right away and see what's going on in the world, and now and see that it's been progressively worse and worse and worse. But then you still go out and you still come home and you're fine. You still go out and you go to McDonald's and you come home and you're fine. So how bad is it really out there? Because the way the news portrays it, we basically live in Iraq. We basically live in 1950s, 1930s, 1940s Mississippi. You know, everything that they're saying is out there these days is pure regression. Is pure things. Is just are things that we have gone through, and they're trying to tell us we're still there. Well, when did that happen?
You just reminded me of how there was this like great video clip of they were interviewing college students after, I forget who did it, but I saw it on Part of My American, that they were interviewing college students about the Georgia voting laws and asking them if it was racist, and all these, you know, like white college students were being like, like, yeah, of course, it's really racist. And they're like, well, why is it racist? And they're like, oh, because they don't know how to get on the internet, or they don't have IDs, and like those people don't, or like those kinds of people don't do this and don't have that. And they sounded so like
Cringe-worthy.
bigot and like cringely like racist, like these, all these, Gen Z whatever college students, and that's like the mentality that they're like planting into this next generation of white people, of having this, like they're reasserting this like regression into these eras, like 1940s 30s Mississippi, into the mindsets of the children now, thinking that they're so elevated. Right, and calling them woke.
What the?
If they don't agree with their friends, if they don't agree that the Georgia voting laws are racist, then they're going to be called out racist by all their other white woke college friends, And then on the same interview, like they started asking a bunch of like Black or melanated people in the area if they had a driver's license or if they had ID, and all of them were like, yeah, of course. And they're like, do you know anybody that's melanated that doesn't have an ID? And they're like, no. Well, you need it to get around, to do everything. And they're like, do you know where the DMV is? And they're like, oh yeah, it's over on 45th Street. And like they knew the exact like location of the DMV and how to get there, like, so like it's
come on. Sad.
So like this regression that we're going through, and they're promoting, if we just turned off our TV, we wouldn't have this impression that these types of incidences are occurring. We just have the like reality of our interactions with the people around us.
Right. Yep, I agree. I agree completely. And
sorry, it keeps spiraling us back, like we're wrapping it up, and I'm like, and another thing.
just keep in mind that, again, this isn't about being dicks and trying to be insensitive to any type of tragic event that has happened recently. It's just pointing out the patterns of them and wondering why these patterns exist. It's not because the world is crazy.
Right.
You can walk out your door and understand that that's not the case. So again, it's just question the patterns, stay vigilant. That's it. One, look into the red flag laws and understand why all of these things are potential. They're all potential dangers. These executive orders, Biden the other day saying no amendment is absolute. These are dangerous words he's speaking.
Right.
These are setting the precedent to absolutely do change the Constitution, and that's unheard of. I've never seen anything like it before. So yeah.
All this progress we had over the last 250 years.
Let's undo all that.
Let's undo all that.
They are, and regression, and it's working.
Cancel culture, cancel the amendments.
Right. I'm waiting for us to get canceled.
We're halfway there. We have 2 thumbs down guys now.
I know, we have 2 thumbs down guys. I saw that. I thought that was kind of cool.
They do.
Hey, thumbs down guys.
Back at you.
Oh, that's good.
We still got your views, sucker.
Right. Score one for us. So what, are we wrapping up? Oh
yeah, I think we're done. So visit us on Patreon, where we'll have early access and behind the scenes and AMAs and exclusive casts. And we are kind of on Facebook, kind of on Twitter, a little bit on Telegram. We'll speckle into your inbox there, here and there. Yeah, but it's happening. It's happening.
We're getting there. We're trying.
We appreciate your support and all of you listening, and it gives us so much encouragement and having the opportunity to have these conversation with you all. And yeah, it keeps us vigilant, getting to come back here with you.
Yeah. So wake up, because we're tired of doing this now.
We're ready to retire. No,
right. So yeah, 2DO, Meeks Kali, stay vigilant. Stay vigilant, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, we love you guys.
I felt this incredible surge of power, like God must feel when he's holding a gun.
Guns aren't toys. They're for family protection, hunting dangerous or delicious animals, and keeping the King of England out of your face.